Welcome to Citizen Impact, a project of the Miami Valley Full Employment Council. I'm the host, Logan Martinez. We have a very, very important show tonight about the Wright State strike and the faculty out there. A lot's been going on this week. There's been no progress in the closing of Good Samaritan Hospital. The coalition's been working on that. The Full Employment Council has joined with the community groups. And Premier Health is building everywhere but in the city of Dayton. And we encourage people to keep putting pressure on them. This last week, we participated in the Poor People's Campaign statewide meeting. The Full Employment Council was part of the campaign this last summer, in which there were demonstrations in about 40 state capitals. The Poor People's Campaign is mobilizing again for this next year, and we hope to be with them, and we'll be fighting for the rights of poor people and the unemployed. We're going to start with a little clip of the students joining the picketers out at Wright State. We're very excited that the faculty and some of the students are joining us tonight, and if we could show the clip of the march and the picket out at Wright State.
Get the trustees out the door! 5, 6, 7, 8. Why won't you negotiate? With you guys on our side, it's over. Thank you. Thank you. With the students with us.
Oh, good God.
Wow.
Oh, this is 102.
I was like, okay, well, so me and Korean both.
One-sided on 26, 25, 24, 20.
Whoa, I like that. Okay, that was a student march joining the faculty at the picket line. It looked like a great turnout of students. I think when I was out there on Monday, they had another march of students joining the faculty. We have like 3 guests right now. We'll have another guest in a little bit, but could you introduce yourself?
I'm Professor Noeleen McIlvenna, sometimes called Dr. No. I'm from History Department. I teach colonial American history.
Early history. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Twill from the Department of Social Work, and I'm a professor, and I teach social work practice, and policy and social activism.
Well, welcome. And we have a student, Elyse.
Yeah, I'm Elyse Angle from the biology department. I'm currently doing a senior thesis on eDNA protocol and using it to detect invasive species in the Wisconsin area.
Okay, well, welcome to the show today. We really appreciate the faculty and the students. You've had quite a week out at Wright State. This is day 7.
That's correct.
And when we started out, the administration was not negotiating, and just in the last day, they've decided maybe they will negotiate. Now, Noeleen, you've been very involved in, so could you maybe just give us a little update of where things stand right now and what brought us to this point?
And what brought us to this point in the short term was on January 4th, the board imposed a contract. When you impose a contract, it means that the faculty have no recourse but to take it or to leave it. It's a statement saying that negotiations are over. This is your contract. Faculty decided to leave it. It was a horrific contract that would have hurt students past, present and future in terms of the damage it would have done to the long-term reputation of the university, but also very quickly on the short term, what time we could have given our students. But so we organised, we filed our notice and we went on strike on January 22nd, and we've been out all week. As a last-ditch attempt, the university filed a motion to determine that our strike was unauthorised, to try and declare our strike illegal and force us back into the classroom. And there was an emergency meeting on Sunday. Is that just yesterday?
Yes.
Up in Columbus with the SERB, and they lost that. And at the end of that, I think they realised they had to talk. So there was a meeting, and then that set up a negotiation session, which has just begun. This is the first negotiation the board has and the administration have agreed to since last fall. And so we are hoping that there will be a settlement soon. You know, everyone knows where they stand, so there's not new things to find out. They just have to hammer out a deal. But in the meantime, we are ready to keep going if they don't make a deal. We have had a tremendous strike in terms of there's only been growth in the support and in the solidarity. And we are stronger than we were last Monday. You know, and I think the university understands that too.
Yeah, it's very apparent that the faculty was supporting the strike, the students were, and the community rallied around you, and the unions, and I know a lot of people have been out there picketing with you and stuff. There still seems like there's a pretty big gap between what they tried to force you guys to take and what would be a decent contract. Could you maybe talk about the points? There's the working conditions.
There's many different working conditions. So yeah, there's, you know, things like salaries and healthcare, the normal things people negotiate about. But they came after all the things in our contract that make it a decent place to work, from our rights to teach in the summer, to the fact even if there was to be merit pay, how it would be given out. So they were setting a grounds for the future so that deans and chairs could just choose who got merit pay and who didn't, as opposed to the very objective criteria we have where professors are evaluated, and if there's a raise to be given, you know, you can tell who should get it. But then there were other things, like the big one, of course, was the workload, which is the number of courses we'd have to teach. There was the idea of concept of furloughs, of course, that they would that's just a pay cut because we'd still have to do all our work. What else? I'm probably forgetting. There's so many. Oh, and the job security for 1/3 of our bargaining unit. So that's what we call the non-tenure eligible faculty, the lecturers and instructors. They don't do research, so they're not in the tenure track. They do more teaching. So they currently have to work about 6 years before they get a sort of job security, and they wanted to double that. And that is, you know, a major concern for us, and because all those things have an effect collectively and individually on the things that are essential to a university, like the academic freedom. So if a chair has all the power over who gets merit pay, over who can teach in the summer, over whether an NTE can keep their job, and a chair does what a dean says, and a dean does what a provost says, and in other words, the trustee says, we are less likely to disagree with them and say that's fundamentally not good for the academics, that's fundamentally not good for the curriculum. When we've passed over all that power, right, we know, we've seen the pattern of the past, what happens. Class sizes get bigger. Sometimes subjects that they consider unimportant. And our current trustees have made it clear they don't value the humanities, for example, will get pushed down in importance. Many, many things that should be left to the faculty, who are the experts in academics, we would lose control of the curriculum slowly but surely through all these things.
Now, in the past, the liberal arts are the basis of a higher education has been the liberal arts. That's what the founding fathers took when they went to college. That's what people of generations. And the difference between that is it teaches you to think. And the trend in education seems to be they want you to be a wheel in the cog and do your job and not think.
That's true. And not just liberal arts, I would add the sciences, the pure sciences like biology, chemistry, physics. That idea where you're not necessarily training for a particular job, you are training in how to think, right? So that's true for history or biology.
You're training to gain a certain view of the world.
Yeah.
And how to think, essentially. And I feel like the administration kind of underestimated that ability in the students thus far. I mean, as seniors, juniors, we've already developed that critical thinking skill, and we've been able to see what's been going on behind scenes, and you know, we're not so easily fooled.
Yeah, well, that
has been amazing, right?
we can see that in
yeah.
And it's not just, you know, it's information that people need to be holistic.
Correct.
It's not just to be able to think, it's to be able to have a knowledge of your society and who you are, in which I think everybody, and one of the big things that this strike I think shows is people really don't understand unions or the history of labor. You know, Dayton is a union town. Yeah. It was built by union labor. Union fought, and for a long time we were like huge, but you know, they gutted the manufacturing. And they don't want people to think, well, what did that mean and how those jobs end up in China? There was the corporations that sent them to China. It wasn't,
right.
It wasn't the Chinese came over, well, they're here now. But so there's been a really dynamic this week. It's been quite extraordinary that what has come together out there was kind of uncertain at the initial stages, but the union actually had mustered the people together, the really critical mass to make it happen.
I've been so impressed by our brothers and sisters in labor as well. Not a day has gone by that the AFL-CIO hasn't been there, that the iron workers haven't been there, that faculty from other unionized and not unionized campuses have been there, that police officers have been out. Students.
Every day.
I don't think that an RTA bus has driven by without honking, waving. You know, they were very close to a strike a little over a year and a half ago. So
they did strike.
Yeah, they did.
We had interviews with them, and it was a health care issue. Yeah. And the teachers in Dayton almost went on strike over health care. And we'll get into that a little bit, but
I mean, I think this all these different sets of allies, you know, students, organized labor, alumni and retirees, and other faculty,
friends of public education.
Each has stood up and said, "We're with you." That has bolstered us so much to have all these different groups each do their bit to say, we're with you, you're not alone here. And in fact, the students in particular, of course, because they're there all the time, their support is perhaps the most critical element of all of those. It's just been extraordinary for us, I think, because we were, you know, taking a deep breath and stepping outside the door, and you don't know what the reaction's going to be to that, because like you said, people have forgotten a lot of that history of labor. And, you know, what it takes to get a weekend. Yeah.
Sure.
Right? And how bosses can push you right to the line because they think you won't do it. And so we weren't sure that people would receive it well, you know, or would understand. Sure. You know, sometimes people say, get back to work. But that's not the reaction we've gotten. The opposite has been true.
Well, I know overall, I mean, there has been some negative reaction. I've seen that on some of the people driving by. We have some very conservative, very right-wing people who think unions are not worth, and then the political right wing has been attacking working people and their rights, and unfortunately, a lot of people fall for that. That they think, oh, they're pampered workers, but that's not the case. Most people who work usually work their tails off, and in a lot of situations, the management has over the years tried to take more and more advantage of people.
Absolutely.
And they've cut the health care, they've cut the vacation pay, they've cut, and to the day, it's very hard for people graduating to find, we have, in theory, a lot of jobs, but the real level of unemployment is much higher than what they report. They keep it sort of, and they make out like, well, the economy, we got Donald Trump and he's made capitalism a miracle, but the fact is it's on thin ice, just as it always has been.
Right.
Now, you've worked with a student group. You got a student group there, and you guys have sort of mobilized to support the professors.
Yeah.
What inspired you to do that?
Well, I believe it was the Wednesday before the strike occurred. A student allies meeting was called, just, through word of mouth throughout the student body, and I went to the meeting place at the meeting time, and before you knew it, the room was overflowing with students trying to get in and fit and figure out a way to mobilize and help. And since then, we grew from a room of overflowing students to 17,000 people on Facebook. Or, I'm sorry, 1,700, not 17,000.
That's tomorrow.
Well, that's a darn good start, and I know the videos and the stuff on Facebook have been being hit a lot, and all kinds of, it's like constant. I hope people in the community are getting this other information, because frankly the press coverage of this is sometimes been, they left sometimes the impression that it was, that the Board of Trustees was negotiating.
Yeah, there was some confusion. I never knock these TV reporters. They have no time to do any fact checking. And the university, we felt, hasn't always been 100% transparent, shall I put it that way.
I can attest to that.
And so, they come out and they talk to us and they talk to administration, an hour later they have to edit their, so I think they've tried to be very fair, and but it is hard. It is hard for people to understand. We don't usually get an hour long to sit and describe and explain these more complex things that are in the contract language, for example, or to explain how all the allies have come. And so I really welcome that. Thank you very much. But I don't blame anybody in the media or the press, for any kind of coverage. I think they're doing their best to get our story out there, and to let us at least try and explain why we would come to this.
How do you feel about the trustees and their role in all this? Now I don't want to switch gears here, but
my mom always said, if you can't say something nice, so I'll let Sarah talk.
I think it's really important to remember that higher education is not a business. We are, in fact, higher education. And we're not widgets, and we're not, the idea that we were replaceable. I said a couple times this week, there's not a lot of 5th century Chinese scholars sitting around in Dayton, Ohio looking for a job. That is a rare skill set. And I think the Board of Trustees are viewing things through their very business lens and don't have a lot of practical experience about what it takes to run a class, what goes into the prep work. There was a lot of discussion yesterday about, well, it's just like a class in the box, and like anybody could teach it. You could teach it. You could teach it. You could teach it. No, there's a lot of expertise that went into the development of that class and how I frame and select media for students to watch and discuss, or an assignment, and it's not just chug and plug. And I think that that's a fundamental, just missing understanding. And I welcome.
I think you give them a lot more benefit of the doubt. I think they do have a concept. I mean, they obviously, what they put in this contract was intentional. It was not thought out. Now, I think you're partially right, and I think you're partially right about the media too. But the Board of Trustees really, they knew that you were going to go on strike, because what they put in that contract.
Was so
and
unacceptable.
unilaterally.
Yes.
And so they have that business sense that they know that if you have a union and you put something out there that's not acceptable, then they're going to go. They just assume that the chaos would have been on the picket line and not in the
On
classroom.
the other side of the wall. That is true too. You know, I go back and forth at times thinking about how much they understand about education. I think it's not about understand or not understand, it's about care or not care. Because you prioritize, your priorities show where you are. And we understand the financial crisis. So you have to solve it and you have to cut. But if you think the better cut is to have fewer faculty and therefore 300 students where there used to be 100 in the same classroom, instead of, you know, even just cutting the athletics budget, not cutting it out, but giving them the same percentage cut that every college got or the library got. You know, and when you don't do that, you say that's the sacred ground. That shows your priorities, and that shows, you know, what you value.
Sure,
And that part is sad to us. I think that was really disappointing.
I mean, these people have accepted, they've volunteered, and they're on there for 9 years. I had no idea, but they're appointed for, that's a long time to be appointed for a board.
Yep.
And it's a university, and I assume most of your board members have college degrees. I mean, not that that's not necessarily I mean, you might need someone that isn't a, you know, you can not have a college, you can have a bigger heart.
Right. You know, I think from the beginning of the crisis, I remember once 2 years ago when I went and spoke at the Board of Trustees, and it was in a very different tone. It's true that I'm speaking now. I was just pleading at that point. Some of the faculty had been let go in the College of Liberal Arts. And I said, please, these are really some of our best teachers. And they've made such a difference to our students. We know exactly these particular individuals. These are very low paid individuals. Can you not find, you know, some money for these jobs?
Often $42,000.
Correct. And the coldness with that was greeted with, and so I began to go, well, what is it you don't understand? What is it you're not getting? And gradually they've just revealed, that their priorities are elsewhere. You know, I've tried very hard not to get personal or anything like that.
Sure.
These are issues, but they could have at that point, when things were still much more reasonable and friendly, you know, if any one of them had said, all right, why don't you and me have a conversation and you can explain this to me? Not one of them ever sat down and talked to us. They chose always to talk to the top administrators and not to faculty members. And they could have done that at any one of them could have done that at any point, and not one ever did. And I think that showed a lot about them. That's disappointing.
They didn't engage in dialogue before they pushed you out the door to go on strike.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I'm talking about like anywhere in the last year and a half or 2 years ago.
They also haven't engaged with students at all. I mean, myself personally and many of my classmates have reached out not only to the Board of Trustees but to the president of the university, expressing like really grave concerns about the quality and the future of their education at Wright State, and they've gone almost entirely ignored. Emails, phone calls. In fact, you know, myself and 16 other students had to go and sit outside of Cheryl Schrader's office, President Cheryl Schrader's office, until we were given the chance to set up a meeting with her.
Has that meeting happened?
It is not. It's scheduled for Wednesday.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
You know, our group, the Full Employment Council, we've been doing this for years and years, and so we've dealt with a number of the plant closing and workers, and the hardship that's caused the workers, whether it was the GM plants. We had like 25,000 GM workers here. Now we're down to like less than 1,000. We had NCR, we had, and the consequences, you know, they closed the hospital. You know, what kind of management closes the hospital without asking the community's input at all. I mean, they're asking what to do with the lot after they tear it down, after they've done it, but they didn't want to know, they held it as a secret.
Right.
Because they knew that would upset the community. And we've seen that, you know, that with these plant closings and everything. And what ends up, you know, we have 8,000 vacant boarded up houses in the county or in Dayton. That's as a result of people losing their homes, losing their jobs, losing their health care. And that consequences, they know about that. We had this Frontline show about Dayton.
Yes, we saw
where
that,
it showed, you know, a third of the population is in poverty.
Yep.
And the reason it's in poverty, they don't have good wages, they don't have a safety net, and all that. And so to have faith in the manager class here anymore, you would have to be either extremely right-wing or in the dark, because they really don't care about what happens to, you know, there are 500 homeless people on the streets of Dayton. It's going to be 1 degree.
Wednesday.
And we have homeless people on the street, and we have 8,000 vacant houses. And so the irrational behavior there, and I don't want to, you know, go, but
you're talking to a social worker here,
yeah.
so she can tell you every
but
stat you need to know. Yeah.
But the you know, we're hoping that they're going to negotiate in good faith here, and that negotiations are going on right now as this show is going on.
Yep.
And that's a big step forward.
Well, that's an admission, you know, that they were in the wrong. That's something, that they actually went in the room, because they kept saying, no, the deal is done. It's there's no more negotiating.
Yeah.
And so now they've gone into a room, so that's an opening. And we know the impact of the strike.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Elyse can testify to the fact that despite their great promises a week ago that everything will go on as normal, we don't need these people.
Every class will be covered.
Every class will be fine, and then even after a day or two, well, 80% of them are covered. And you know, you might have heard already some student accounts, and I'm sure she could tell you more. But what they meant was covered was, you know, somebody took attendance.
Yeah, well,
and gradually, as the week has gone on, the holes, you know, have become much more apparent, because every student starts to come out and tell their story. They never showed up, you know, or somebody incompetent admitted they were incompetent. I've been told to teach this class and I know nothing about it.
Or someone with less credit hours, and my specialized subject is trying to teach me. I have more credit hours in women and gender studies than the individual trying to teach me.
For our accredited and licensed programs as well, nursing, teacher education, social work, there are larger licensing issues at play as well. So most of us have accreditation standards that require certain kinds of professionals with certain degrees and certain number of practice years experience. And we just had people dropped in classes that we found about tonight who are not going to meet our accreditation standards. And
so we think that the board has finally realized that. And that's why they're in the room tonight. Mm-hmm. They have discovered that we are irreplaceable. Mm-hmm. And so that now they are going to have to make some concessions. We hope that they really get it and that they are willing to make, you know, mostly what we wanted was the same language as our old contract. We wanted almost no change. Everything was fine. So just continue. Mm-hmm. You know,
so there's
no need for these wholesale
pay
changes.
raise. Now you guys have already lost 1 week's worth of pay.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and you're starting the second week tomorrow.
Correct.
And so that's a chunk of change for any worker to lose a week's worth of pay. And if you lose a week and a half or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it becomes difficult.
we have a lot of dual academic appointment families where both spouses are on the picket line. We have single moms and single dads who are facing child care decisions as we move into February about whether they can afford child care. So people suffer very quickly without a paycheck. Our federal employees can attest to their hardship.
Sure, well, that's the other background of this, is that the government has been shut down now for over a month.
And you know, the fear even of not having, the fear of not having health insurance, in fact, was perhaps the greatest fear for many colleagues who were scared about going on strike. Not because they didn't think it was the right thing to do, but you can get COBRA, but that's very, very expensive.
So everybody that's on strike has no health care.
No health care. No health care.
So
they're eligible to buy COBRA, but they don't. You know, they have to.
If you fall down and break your leg, it could, and serious break could cost you.
Yeah, we're quite worried about the snow out there.
Yeah.
I keep saying
people honking and waving. I'm like, I appreciate it. Don't hit me.
I can't afford to break a hip right now. So yeah, no, this is a serious sacrifice people have made. You know, we hope we can negotiate some of that back, but all of it is in jeopardy. All that income, indefinitely.
And the administration keeps perpetuating this narrative to students that this is an easy decision for the faculty to make and that they can just end this whenever they want. And, you know, that's not true. You know, it took a lot of long hours and hard thinking to make a very hard but necessary decision. And, yeah.
Okay, now I want to go to your button here because this is a very important fact. Could we get a close-in of
Do I need to
Dr. Doe's button here? But anyway, what the button says, it says 17 cents is what the faculty gets out of your tuitions on every dollar, right?
And
Could
so,
you say that?
Yeah, the full-time faculty, salary and benefits cost 17 cents of every dollar that the student pays for tuition. And so the point of that is to show that, especially when this thing first started, this economic crisis, well, there's a lot of places to cut before you cut the central mission of the university, the teaching and the research. The reason our university exists is for those two things. The people who do all of that work only amount to 17% of the budget.
No.
Everything else, not everything, you know, we have to have buildings. We're not saying we should be 100% of the budget.
We need librarians to help us do our jobs.
Right. Well, I think sometimes, you know, obviously there's certain academic essentials, but there was a lot of places. When I talked about these priorities and what do you value, where do you go to make cuts? And not just in our salaries per individual, but the number of us.
Sure.
So we're down 90 members in 2 years. Right, so a couple of years ago, there was 650 faculty, and now there's about 560 of the full-time teaching faculty.
So you've lost that many?
90. These are mostly, some were let go, but mostly it was attrition. People found other jobs, or they retired.
Great. All right, we're gonna show the next video. This is in the headquarters of the strike, which is across the street, and show some of the spirit of the organizing behind this. And then we have a couple of interviews with students, and then we're going to talk about the impact and the participation of the students and where's it.
Okay, but you're here now. That's good. Yeah, I know.
Like, yes, it's like what we said earlier, and fair on the other argument. But that was the only
I would like to suggest that we that's what she invited. Let's go to a place where
My name is Evelyn Belcher. I'm a senior at Wright State, and I am in the French department.
Okay.
So.
And could you tell me your experience in class today?
Yes. So last night I received an email. I'm a TA for a French 1020 class, and last night I received an email from the department chair saying that they had found a replacement professor for the class, and that all of the students were to come to the class with some homework prepared, and that we would continue on as normal. So this morning when we got into the class, the substitute was there, and he had written on the board that there would be a mini quiz over some of the chapters, and also that there would be like some review over some of the material that they had covered. However, we quickly found out that he was not prepared at all. He had not even glanced at the textbook that, for the course. He didn't even have a copy. He also didn't have a copy of the syllabus. So the students were extremely lost as to what was expected of them. During the class, he was asking them questions about some things they had learned, but he also quickly dove into teaching some new material that honestly went right over most of their heads because they are in a very beginning level class, and the way he was teaching it was really not communicating. He also didn't have any type of lessons or context prepared, so basically he gave a whole lesson on grammar without context, and honestly I don't really think that many of them walked away without learning anything from that class. So.
Okay, could you say your name?
Yeah, my name is Michael Kulich. I'm finishing my last semester here at Wright State, and I just wanted to voice my opinion and concern as a student. Primarily, you know, before all this started, the administration sent email after email saying that Wright State was going to operate normally, that they were going to have qualified replacements for any faculty going on strike. But throughout this week, for me, it has been anything but normal, and none of my classes so far have had any qualified replacements. There have only been people there with sign-in sheets, and those people have been there for different reasons every single day. They've been giving me different reasons, and I'm concerned as a student when I start to believe that I can't trust anything that the administration is saying, that they're not being clear and upfront. And I just want to say right now that I know as a student they couldn't find people to replace my professors because they go above and beyond. And it's very concerning and disappointing as a student to see how unfair the administration's being to all of them. So that's just one student's opinion. I know there are thousands of my classmates that share the same idea.
Okay, welcome back. Now that was very insightful about the students that we've heard these stories over and over again about just how untogether the administration had the classes after all this boasting that, oh yeah, let the faculty go, we'll take care of you. Now, of course, they had it in the paper that the president was teaching fairly well, but maybe that's what her calling is, and she should just go back to teaching if she's good at that, because administrating may not be her calling. But we have another student here with us now. Brooke, why don't you say your name and what you study?
My name is Brooke Solomito, and I am in the College of Science and Math. I am currently pursuing a degree in statistics and a minor in disability studies.
And in a little bit we'll have some statistics on this attendance of and the sort of the chaoticness. Now you have some student testimony about like how. Would you maybe share a little bit of that?
I do. I do have to say that the two interviews that we just saw are very typical of what we've been hearing from our fellow classmates. Classes are not being covered, period. Those that are do not have qualified instructors. Some instructors, fill-in instructors, have even gone so far to harass and berate students. Some have called out students for being in support of our faculty and their striking, singling out in front of the classmates.
Have you seen any of that yourself?
I've heard a recording of it happening on at least one occasion.
Wow. So they...
I have 2 different students telling me that their courses are being combined with another course that doesn't have really anything to do with the course that they're in. You know, at a face value, it sounds like it might be similar, but you know, sociology is a fundamentally different area of study than psychology is. You know, you can't just combine.
They put them in together.
They put a psychology and a sociology course together.
Wow.
Into one classroom.
So, you know, I haven't even heard all these stories. I hear snippets, and of course I follow a little bit closer to the history department, and so I know what's going on there, but it's fascinating to hear what's happening for the students happening all over the university campus. Yeah.
So you found any of that in your classes, Brooke? How have you?
Yes. One of my courses actually have been impacted by it, and I have worked 2.5 years to get into this course, so it's been very impactful to me of how hard that I have worked to get into this specific course that I am currently enrolled in.
And me as well. You know, I'm currently fulfilling my biology electives, you know, the things that are most important to my training as a biological scientist. I do not have a marine biology professor. I do not have an ornithology professor. I'm still without an advisor for my senior thesis, and no one in the administration, whether it be in my college or the College of Science and Math or the university in general, has even addressed what senior honors thesis and master's students are supposed to do without their advisors, without expert counsel on how to proceed.
I mean, the graduate, because you might be able to find somebody with a master's student who could cover a bachelor degree course, but you can't find people that can teach graduate courses. The graduate school across the campus has been left. Students are told to just go home and read with each other and run their own classes.
So when you miss 5 days because of snow in the public school system, that's all the days you're allowed to miss, and then they have to make up those days.
Right.
Has there been any discussion of like making up these courses?
Well, you know, in university, I mean, we're thinking about that now, the profs. If we can get back fast, we can
get caught up.
We can get caught up because we're used to missing snow days and maybe go to a conference. So usually within a semester, you might have 2 or 3 days you can jiggle the material about. You can ask students to maybe watch a video at home that you had planned to show in class time and cover up more material. You know, you always have to try and if we could get back soon, we could fix this, because we've got several months for each prof to make those adjustments. If it goes on longer, it's going to be a lot more difficult. Every day it gets a wee bit more difficult. The first week, okay, we missed a week. I remember 2 years ago in January because of those super frigid temperatures, and we all managed. So we can manage a week. Once you start to get into the second week, now you're pushing it. So, you know, that's why we would love it to be resolved ASAP.
So there's a chance they're negotiating right now, and hopefully they've come to their senses, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Now, you've done some extracurricular activity on statistics for us.
Yes.
And so why don't you tell us what you have, and this is sort of like a snapshot of what's going on at Wright State.
I want to first start off by saying I had not touched a math book in 3 days, and it was giving me a headache, and I was like, what can I do that would be impactful and that would get the point across? So we started collecting student data, but then we decided, let's do it with faculty data. Let's get all the faculty data of the courses and with the sections that they are currently teaching and compare that to the statistics for the rest of the university of what all is being offered for the different colleges. And it just spiraled up from there, and it really just reminded me of why I'm in the field that I'm in. So I just, guys, a little insight of what I have.
Okay, let's put this chart up here that you've done. Can we put the chart up? There it is. It's right there.
Okay. So out of 578 courses being offered within the Dayton campus, 200 of them had been reported from 200 faculty members. 30% of the lower level are not being taught by their original instructor, and 70% are not being taught by their current instructor with the upper level courses. And the 70% of the courses, a lot of students don't look at the first 2 years of their college degree. They look at the latter part of their college degrees. They look forward to the latter part because it is those skills and techniques that will be beneficial to them in their professional careers, and that is what is irreplaceable. And the faculty, with them being on strike, there's that void and struggle of finding those professors that are irreplaceable, because you're not going to find someone who can teach advanced, statistics, or, someone who can give trombone lessons for a senior recital. Those are individual
You're not going to
techniques.
find a marine biologist in Dayton, Ohio.
No. Right. And I think, what Brooke is showing us here, that of the courses not covered, the biggest section are in fact those senior level courses, the upper level courses and the graduate courses. And what we're saying is that those are the courses in your major. Those aren't just those core courses. But that's exactly why a student comes to university, right? And those are, of course, the professors that are the hardest to replace. That real specialized knowledge of what you learn in your major. And so that's where the biggest impact has been. It's been on the juniors and seniors who are now, they've chosen their major, they've finished their core, and now they're ready to specialize. And specialized expertise is just not easily found. This is what she's saying, what Dr. Twill was saying, what Elyse is saying. And what we knew before we started, we kept trying to say to them, why would you push us to this? How are you making these promises that all these courses will be covered? Who's sitting out there with PhDs in all these specialized areas that can just come in? And so when she did the actual stats on it, that was the stat that jumped out most at me, because I hadn't really even thought about who's on strike and what courses are they teaching. But Brooke sat down to try and make it methodical, because we were getting the stories from the administration, 100%, 80%. And we knew that didn't make sense, that all these courses were covered. They couldn't be. So she tried to do this survey, am I right? And there was about 200 of the professors. She came up with these numbers, which is a pretty good sample size. It's
Sure, it's bigger than...
I would also like to point out, I attended the SERB hearing yesterday in Columbus, and the legal counsel for the administration, it seemed like that 80% of courses being covered was completely new to him, because he went around and said that only 40% of those classes had their professors.
Well, see, I think
the definition of covered.
Yeah, covered could be attendance.
Right.
I mean, I think that's...
So it revealed, and what Brooke has done is really bring stats to it in a way to try and bring some truth and reality, instead of just numbers being thrown around with no evidence. She said, I want evidence, right? So it's been really interesting for us to watch the students demonstrate their skills. She said, I've got a particular set of skills, right? And they're the stats ones, and I'm going to get some hard numbers. And some of the others from other disciplines have read the texts that have been put out, and they've analysed them, And that has been amazing to watch these students put out. I see that this is being presented without evidence. This claim is being made without evidence. So they're analysing sort of administrative statements, and finding them wanting. And for us faculty, it was like, whoa, those critical thinking skills we've been trying to teach they've learned them, right? And been, in fact, really impressive,
Well, I've been very impressed. I was a student at Wright State many years ago, and there was difficulties there. We won't go into all that then, but the future here is really important. That I would say this whole experience of the strike has been a very important learning experience for the community, for the faculty, and for the students, because I don't know, have you ever been on strike before?
No, sir.
And what about you, Sarah? Have you ever been on?
I've been furloughed.
You've been furloughed, but never on strike. No, I have not talked to anybody at Wright State that ever been on strike in their whole life.
Right. I mean, a couple of our faculty remember going as a child with their father in the 50s or something. That's the closest most of us had.
Well, they got rid of most of the unions here in the Dayton area, and they've gotten rid of. So that you're not going to go on strike unless you're going to walk off and they're going to fire you right away. Because if you don't have a union,
you can't.
That's what they do. Now, do you have something more you want to share about the statistics, or before we go much further here? But go ahead.
So we have a few disclaimers. When we first calculated the overall data that our 200 professors reported to us, and it's only 200 out of
approximately 350 that are supposedly striking.
Yes. So this is just a small sample of that, and we excluded practicums, we included independent studies, basically all research-based courses, just because different departments handle them in different ways.
Sure.
And we did not include that in our final account for the 578 sections that the 200 professors reported to us.
Okay, now.
And I would like to add that we didn't exclude that for our benefit. If we were to include those courses, they would absolutely increase that 578 number. Yeah, because I do not have a thesis advisor. I know everyone in my senior seminar class does not have a thesis advisor. I know nursing students have reported that their practicals are going
here we have a medical.
Yeah. That's a serious question. That's a really serious question, because to get their licenses, they have to have a certain number of hours.
And they have to be taught by certified.
Absolutely.
You don't want the doctors being taught by Logan Martinez.
That's correct. Right.
You would be in trouble.
Yeah. So, there's an extraordinary number of courses not being covered, and some of them are very critical, and most of them are the specialized courses that in your major. And so the other thing I would like folks to know is that it's when people start to come into their major that those relationships are built, right? Where we start the real mentoring, right, of the individual students. And that's, again, something that's threatened by this contract that they imposed on us, because that's what happens when you get, bigger class sizes or more classes to teach. You can't give the honor student or the individual trying to do an honors thesis any time, right? Because you've got 1,700 other students to see to. And so that's how the education quality can get diluted. A lot of my teaching doesn't happen in the classroom, right? I give a lecture in the classroom, or we do an exercise.
Office time.
But no, it's mostly on their homework. So, because they write history papers in mine, right? Okay. So every individual one gets that feedback. You're good at this part, but you're not good at that. You need to work on this. That's teaching that is given individually, very individualized to each student. When you have a bigger class or more classes to teach, that's when people go to Scantron forms. There's none of that individualized attention that can be given.
Try to ask a question in one of those classes, but we only have a few more minutes left, and so we want to sort of go ahead, say what you want to say. But
we're different point, but related. A lot of seniors are looking for letters of recommendation. They're moving on to graduate schools and to jobs, and they need letters of recommendation from these individuals that they've built these relationships with, that know their strengths and weaknesses as a student and a potential employee. And when faculty are striking, those aren't attainable. So, it's putting futures at risk quite directly.
Sure. Well, we're at this very important crossroad. Hopefully, we're really hoping this, the negotiations come through and you guys get a better contract than what you had before. And I think I really want to point that out. You were not asking for any increases. You were not asking for, they have this phrase that's in the press about make a uniform health care plan. And what they mean by that is they've cut the staff's health care, and now they want to cut the faculty. Right. They don't want to say that.
No.
So that's
a very polite way of saying
and
exactly
so,
what's going on.
And we understood even that we would get we'd pay more for our healthcare, we'd get a lesser plan. But not the plan they imposed. The plan they imposed really penalizes the sick or the poorest of our faculty. We were willing to pay more in premiums across the board, so there would be a fairness in it, so that as opposed to sort of out-of-pocket maximums and deductibles that hurt the one person who gets sick, where in other words you're really just paying for your own health care. It's not health insurance anymore.
Sure.
And that's their plan design, and we had wanted to go to a plan design.
Sure, well, health care
you
is the biggest cause of bankruptcy in America, and the biggest cause of home foreclosures is health care. And that's because the health care system is wrecked.
Right.
And they push the workers and stuff. Now, we're going to find out in a day or two here what's happening with the negotiations. You guys have took a step here, and I know it's been, you know, on the faculty and the union there for, you're doing this for the school and for the students and for yourselves. But it's also, as a community organizer here in Dayton, we really appreciate you guys stepping forward and taking a stand. And we really appreciate the students. There's a hope in the future here, and it's because of you guys taking a stand, not only for the Wright State, but for all the workers.
Yeah, I think that modeling for other ones that it's okay, because it's a scary thing to do. And yet we're all still standing, you know, and hopefully we know we've made an impact because they're in the room, right? And so for other workers who feel that they are being treated poorly, you know, you can organize and you can make a stand, and community people you didn't even know will come and rally around you. We've been smothered in love.
Okay, we really appreciate that. The Full Employment Council will be following this. We call on the community, the Dayton, the broader Montgomery County community to support the faculty, support the students. People have to get involved. We cannot stand by and let the corporate elite just run our country into the ground. And so people need to become active citizens and get out there. If this strike goes on, come out to Wright State and join the picket line.
Yes, please.
Okay, for the Miami Valley Full Employment Council, hang in there and be an active citizen.